Although I think the PowerPoint will do a good job of recapping when we send that out. Okay.
Morning,
All
Jay.
right.
Good morning.
Good morning. I think let's get started. I don't know if we've got everybody, but we've got a big group and it's 10:01, so might as well take the time that we have. I'm going to turn it over to Neil to kind of just give us some opening remarks this morning, and then we'll present basically on the state of this planning process, what's happened, what we've accomplished, what there is left to do, what we'll need your support on. But I'm going to turn it over to Neil.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being a part of this call. As we continue our path through the 2011 update to the County Hazard Mitigation Plan, alongside of Tetra Tech, you guys are the stakeholders community or stakeholders group. We have made some real good progress. We've had some changes in our leadership within Tetra Tech. So first introduce Shannon Clark. She is taken and running with this plan probably starting about 4 months ago, give or take. They've made some incredible progress. We have some annexes printed and ready to be distributed. And today, as she said, we're just going to plan to play a catch up from the original kickoff meeting to today and lay the course of where we're going forward. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Shannon. Again, thank you all for participating.
Great. Thank you, Neil. I'm going to get my slideshow going here. Okay. All right, so Emily is our lead planner, Emily Vassallo. If you don't mind, Emily, since we've got a big group, feel free, anybody, to raise your hand, via the Teams or interrupt me. But Emily, I'm going to ask you to let me know if that happens, and I'll just pause where we are and we can address those comments in real time. I just don't know that I'm going to be able to monitor that very well. So here we are, Steering Committee, Part 1 Roundup. As Neil said, well, here we'll do the agenda first, right? So we're going to do welcome and introductions. We'll keep those really brief. I'll just sort of call on us in the order that we appear. We'll say who we are, what we're representing here. And if you have any more information that you'd like to share, great. I'm going to just do a very, very, very brief HMP planning process refresh, mostly because I know it's been a while since this group convened. Next, I'm going to do a little bit of what's new in mitigation, a little four-year situational awareness. In the last few years, there have been some, very important policy updates that I would like to share with the group because it will impact, what we need to do to get to the finish line on this plan and get us approved, but also what implementation looks like for HMA grant applications. I'll do a roundup of what's been accomplished. We'll talk next steps, and then we can talk any questions and discuss anything that we need to address. So I thought I had an introduction slide. I don't. That's fine. We can leave it here. As Neil said, my name is Shannon Clark. I have been at Tetra Tech for just about 3 months now. So came in and kind of picked up this plan where you all had left it at that point. And I have worked pretty much exclusively in mitigation in New York State for the last 7 years. I was a contractor to Dishes for most of that time. Hi, Kevin. And was embedded at the agency. So, I just feel really super grounded in, what's going on in New York State in the world of mitigation and resilience. I've worked with many communities across the state, many counties. And so, feel very capable of getting this plan across the finish line, before expiration in August. With that said, I will turn it over to introductions, and I'll just call on you guys in the order I see you on my screen, so we're not stepping on each other in this virtual environment. All right, so Barbara, you're up first.
Hi, I'm Barb Cadwell. I work for the DOT in our planning department.
Great, thank you. Kevin Clapp.
Hi, Kevin Clapp from Dishes. I'm the supervisor of hazard mitigation for the planning section.
Thank you. Jason Crump.
Jason Crump, Jefferson County Code Office.
Jay Madison.
Hi, I'm the Jefferson County Agricultural Coordinator and Deputy Chief Executive Officer for Jefferson County Economic Development.
Great, thanks for being here. Jeffrey.
Jeff Leindecker, Jefferson County Public Health Emergency Preparedness Coordinator.
Joe Plummer.
Good morning, everyone. Joe Plummer, Director of Fire and Emergency Management. I just would really like to thank everybody for all their hard work with this, and hopefully that we can get some funding back into the county for some projects that need to be done. And I can't thank enough Neil, my deputy, for his hard work with this, but also our partners at Tetra Tech and all of you as our partners. Thanks again.
Thanks, Joe. Jonathan Cole. Oh, you're on mute. Thanks for coming on camera, but you're on mute. I'll try again.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm here with Fort Drum Regional Health Planning Organization, and also the other hat as the mayor of the village of Air.
Awesome. Where am I on our list? Okay, Katie.
Katie Malinowski, Executive Director of the New York State Tug Hill Commission.
Great, thank you. Karen.
Karen Markham, DSS Commissioner.
Great, thank you. Michael.
Michael Tarasoff, one of the planning managers here at Dishes for hazard mitigation.
Great. And I also see Michael Borses. I'm assuming that's a different person.
Yes, I'm the planning director for Jefferson County.
Okay, great. Thank you. Now we know you've called in, so I don't have to call on that phone number later. Great. Okay. Neil, we all know Neil. Thanks for convening us, Neil. Do you have anything you'd like to say now?
I do. Just a couple
Great.
of extra stakeholders that have already introduced themselves. One that has and one that hasn't. Karen Markham from DFA. We recognized the gap early on with our underserved communities, and I wanted to loop in DSS and community service. You'll get an introduction from community services here a little bit later. So Karen and community services, I appreciate you guys jumping in on this late. The underserved communities are an important part of this process.
Totally. Yep.
So thanks
Okay.
for jumping.
Thanks, Neil. Let's see, Patrick.
Yeah, hi, Pat Labiendo, Thousand Island Bridge Authority. Not sure why I'm showing up as unknown user on some people's screens, but
Gotcha. Yeah, I see your name fine, but thank you.
okay.
Christopher.
Yes, Chris Reff from the Washington Jefferson County Area Transportation Council.
Great, thank you. Ryan.
Yeah, I'll come on camera real quick. So Ryan McTash, in a few weeks, the emergency management planner for Jefferson County.
Great, thank you, Ryan. And Sean.
Sean Vincent, Director of IT at Jefferson County.
Great. I think the only phone number we didn't hear from, if you're ending in 5135, you'd like to introduce yourself.
That was Jason Crump at the code office. I called in, so.
Okay, great. All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Steve Jennings.
Steve Jennings, Jefferson County Director of Public Health. I don't know why my name isn't popping up, but I can't figure it out.
I've got your name on mine.
Oh, do you?
Michael-
Okay.
Yeah, Michael from Dishes, we jumped in with you already. Thomas Campo,
Yep, Tom Campo, the City of Watertown engineer.
Tim Rutan,
Hey, good morning, Tim Ritton. I'm the Director of Jefferson County Community Services. I oversee all of the behavioral health services and planning for the county.
I think that's everybody, Shannon. I just scrolled down a little further.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I know I noticed that it said Seymour and I didn't. Anyway, thank you everybody for being here. I hope that this is a productive meeting for all of us. And I'm just going to jump right in. Move you all over to my other screen here. Okay.
I'd just like to add Patricia Schulenberg from Jefferson County Soil and Water is here, and also say hi to Barb at DOT.
Great. Nice. I think maybe somebody just joined. Was it Matthew Timerman? We're doing introductions. Sorry to put you on the spot. We'll get him at the end. Okay. All right. So like I said, the briefest of overviews here for what hazard mitigation is. It's any sustained action that reduces or eliminates long-term risk to people and property from future disasters. But as we know, this is an opportunity that goes beyond, the confines of that strict definition. It can also be economic development, revitalization, beautification planning, natural resource conservation, and cost savings when we think about what we're going to be implementing here. The planning process. So again, I'm going to be very high level. A lot of this is very much underway. Organizing the planning process happened early on. Updating the risk assessment has been completed. I'll say a little bit more about that later. Updating the mitigation strategy is to come. That is something that we'll all do together towards the end of January, beginning of February. Then we will give you all an opportunity to review the plan and provide feedback. We will also give the jurisdictional reps, stakeholders, and the public the same opportunity. We will post this online and make sure that we are circulating that opportunity. Then we will submit to our friends at Dishes and FEMA, they'll do a state review first at Dishes. And once Dishes gives it the seal of approval, they will send it up to FEMA, who will then review and give plan approval, at which time we will adopt this plan locally. The way the adoption works is the first jurisdiction in the county, whether it's the county itself or your smallest village, the first one to adopt kicks off a year window of adoption. Anybody who's participated needs to adopt within that year. And then these three on the bottom here, these are just things that we're doing all the time, right? So we're doing outreach and engagement. We are doing our best to integrate with other things you guys have going on locally, and we're drafting the plan. So those don't really have a start and a stop. They are continuous. Okay. So the participants of this planning process, the core planning team, that's essentially Neil, Brian, myself, and Emily. The steering committee is all of you. Our jurisdictional representatives, who we're going to talk about later, those are at least one, ideally more than that, person from each community who can help us collect the data and information that we need, to get that sort of local understanding of risk and impacts. And then we've got our reviewers and also technical assistants, and also for the county, grant administrators with Dishes, and our friends at FEMA Region 2.
Do have a question from Kevin, Shannon.
Yes, hi Kevin.
Hi Shannon. So with the adoption, with the updated policy, we are encouraging locals to start adopting the plan when we submit the plan to FEMA.
Great, love it. Okay, so really, adoption's easy in terms of it's not a heavy lift for paperwork. I know sometimes it's a lift to get it on a meeting and get it in front of the board that's going to adopt, but thank you, Kevin, for that. I appreciate it. So that's perfect slide. What's new in hazard mitigation? So that's the first thing that's changed. This is really a four-year situational awareness, few slides here. You know, some of this may feel a little jargony, but I think it's important that we just sort of level set, you know, the state of the state and hazard mitigation. So one of the things that's changed since the last plan, New York State updated its state hazard mitigation plan in 2023, the very end of that year. And we will leverage this plan greatly for climate change data, for hazard data, and there is an updated action database format that we need to be in compliance with for DISH's review. So we will use that. To speak very quickly about the climate change piece, so in the same year, 2023, New York State updated what was formerly ClimeAid, the 2014 climate impact assessment for New York State. And that was sort of, you know, our local best available data for the impacts of climate change. That has since been updated and is really kind of an amazing and very comprehensive resource. And so, you know, we want to include that in our plan, but also we have to include that in our plan. It's worth saying, I think now that, you know, the planning process, there are lots of really great opportunities. And then there are also some things that are very much based in the regulatory piece, the requirements that we need to meet, of which there are dozens. So if something feels not very intuitive or like a pain, oftentimes that's why, right? This is not necessarily a free form planning process, right? We have a lot of there's a lot of letter of the law we need to follow, but we can go obviously above and beyond that and make this meaningful and have like real teeth locally. But I do just want to kind of put that out there up front because, you know, it is a part of this planning process. The local hazard mitigation planning policy went into effect in 2023. And here are some new things that, you know, we need to make sure that we are compliant with. Some of them already existed and are just sort of farther reaching than they were, and some of them are pretty new. The future changes piece, that is code for climate change, the projected impacts of climate change. So that is now required. New York State was already doing that, so we're ahead of the curve. But like I said, the New York State Climate Impact Assessment will help us with that. And if you all haven't seen it, I can link it when I share the PowerPoint. It was put out by NYSERDA, but it was a huge, very collaborative effort across a lot of different agencies, practices, practitioners, subject matter experts. It's really a fantastic resource for our state. Outreach and engagement. This has always been a requirement. It just got broader. The list got longer and more specific. You know, there's more of a focus on socially vulnerable populations, you know, especially given the Justice 40 way of allocating these funds now. So you all are going to help us with that. You know, there's a emphasis on this sort of lived experience lens, this anecdotal, hyper local input. You know, they don't just want to see data without that local context. And I think, again, New York State was ahead of the curve with encouraging that. Same with the buildings code piece. You know, there are more requirements related to including information about building codes in these plans than there were. Thankfully, New York State, you know, statewide, there's building code adoption. You know, there are other states where there are states or counties, whole states or counties that don't do building code adoption. You know, enforcement is another issue. And that's something that we'll have to kind of address in our capabilities. You know, it's one thing to have building codes, it's another thing to enforce them. But we'll make sure that that content is included. Then there's this piece about integration across FEMA programs and addressing community lifelines. This is a framework that FEMA put together for, you know, talking about critical facilities and services. I think on the next slide, I've got just sort of a visualization for us. But really what this means is that we just want to be speaking FEMA's language. You know, community lifelines is sort of code for critical infrastructure, critical facilities, critical services, but we will use their categories. And then this is the biggest one that I think that has the most impact on getting this plan across the finish line. So it used to be that mitigation actions, before 2023, you only needed 2 per jurisdiction that were approvable in the world of sort of HMA funding, right? So that they would be eligible for HMA funds. You could have more actions than that were not as mitigation specific, but were relevant and came up through the planning process. This has changed. So instead of 2 per community, now you need for each community 1 mitigation action per hazard of concern. So that shifts the threshold from 2 actions to, in some cases, 10 or 11 or 14 for each community, right? So there's a little bit of a heavier lift there, which I think is appropriate, right? We want this plan to be implemented. We want those risks to have identified solutions, but it is for sure a more, it's a higher hurdle, I think, to jump. So we just want to be mindful of that as we have our mitigation strategy discussion. And I see, let me see, Kevin, I see you put something in the chat. I don't want to miss it. Do you want to just speak to that, Kevin, really quick?
Yeah, so what's new with last year with BRIC? So under the BRIC program, FEMA has actually created specific grants for building codes, enhancing, reviewing, and looking at your actual building codes. They have a new subcategory, which each state gets approximately $2 million for. Last year was the first year. And so it's a new opportunity where people can use that to look at their building codes and make sure they're compliant and look at things like software. And it also needs to touch on the NFIP. That's a requirement when looking at this as well. So it's integrating both your regular building codes like the ICC and then the NFIP part of the building codes as well if you were to apply for those grants. So
got it. Thank you, Kevin. Okay. Right. So community facilities and community lifelines. I won't talk too much about this. It'll be in the PowerPoint when I send it out. These are their various categories. Like I said, it's really just their way of classifying critical facilities and critical services in communities. The last what's new in mitigation piece from me. So just in August, very recently, the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, HMA, the policy was updated, right? And so HMA is inclusive of BRIC, which is annual and nationally competitive. It is inclusive of FMA, Flood Mitigation Assistance. It's inclusive of Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, HMGP. That's one of a lot of us are really familiar with because that's where a lot of the project dollars come, and that's the grant that is announced after a presidentially declared disaster. And then we've got HMGP post-fire. So these are the HMA, there are some more, there's Swift Current, there's other ones, but these are the big ones. So what the policy update, I think the thing that's most consequential to communicate to folks updating their hazard mitigation plans is that the policy was emphasizing that they want the hazard mitigation actions that are going to be applied for these grant programs identified directly within the plan. So literally they want to be able to say, you're applying for this BRIC, you're putting in a BRIC application. I want to be able to go to your plan and reference exactly where that thing, is in your plan. I think, and Kevin, you can speak to this, how rigorously this is a barrier potentially. I'm not sure. Obviously when we're working on these plans, we should always be maintaining our plans and updating our plans and not letting them, sit on the shelf for 5 years. So I think the idea is that, if for some reason a mitigation strategy was not included in the plan at the time of approval and or adoption, there is still flexibility to update that plan and include those projects. Kevin,
I don't think it's really a barrier. I think it's just, fixing or either the action that's already in there or adding the action that you intend to apply for. And you also mentioned FMA Swift Current. That is open right now. And we are having a webinar on that this afternoon. And there's another opportunity in January to attend that webinar.
Great.
So, and
Do
then
you want to
other,
give a quick high level intro to what Swift Current is since it's a new program?
yeah, so we first had it last year was the first year. And so FMA Swift Current is basically built off the flood mitigation assistance program. However, it's designed to be a faster program, and it focuses on risk reduction to NFIP insured properties. And so things like acquisitions, elevations, relocations, floodproofing, retrofitting are some of the different activities that are eligible. And so the objective is for applications to get in faster, get to FEMA faster, and then hopefully get approved faster with this money. So applications are submitted to FEMA on a rolling basis then. And so by doing this, we're hoping that the money gets out the door faster. And so basically the amount of money we get is based upon insured losses throughout the year, basically, that are directly related to those NFIP insured properties.
Great.
And the other program that's not part of the HMA guidance that we also have that's new is what's called the revolving loan fund. And so I know a lot of communities struggle with finding that match money. And so they can use the hazard mitigation revolving loan fund money to be used for that 25% match for their grants as well. And that's at a low interest. I believe it's 1% over 20 to 30 years as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, we'll be sure to include that stuff in the meeting minutes with links so that if you would like to learn more, you can. Yes, Neil.
So I guess I'm looking for a clarification. It's accessibility to all of these hazard mitigation assistance programs is incumbent upon having this hazard mitigation plan. Is that a correct statement?
Yes.
Yes, depending upon when the plan is required, depends upon which type of program it is, though.
Right. So what Kevin means by that is like all of these are dependent on having an hazard mitigation plan. Some of them you have to have an active, so not expired, right? You have to have an active plan at the time of application. Others, you have to have an active plan at the time of award. Others, you have to have it at both. So it depends on the program, you know, which sort of state your plan is. And so what that means is like, let's say you're updating right now, right? And HMGP comes out and you're like, oh, our plan has expired. Can we HMGP, you can apply for it even if your plan's expired, but your plan has to be, approved and adopted by the time you get those funds. So it's different for each program.
Understood. I just think it's important for the stakeholders to understand, as we've talked about all of the potential HMA funding, that a critical component of that is this mitigation planning process. And
absolutely,
as our Jefferson County and other partner stakeholders interact in communities, and garnering support for that is critical. Participation is critical. So I think that as stakeholders, as we all spread the word downstream, when we, message out and get information out to towns and villages, it's important that message is conveyed downstream of how important this is.
Heard that. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so another grant opportunity that is new in the last 5 years, but has grown exponentially, as you can see here. This is another FEMA grant program, the High Hazard Potential Dam Grant, the HHPD. And this is for funds for, Class C high hazard potential dams. There are specific requirements for both local and state plans that need to be met in these hazard mitigation plans for this program. we will be sure that those are met. Just wanted to share here that, the program launched in 2019 and had $10 million available. And as of 2024, it's at 185 million. And you guys do have Class C dams, so we will include, analysis of those to make you eligible for this grant program.
And DEC is the lead for the HHPD grants.
Yeah. Thanks, Kevin. Okay, Jefferson County. What's going on with your plan? You have your hazards of concern on this list. These were, I can't really speak a lot to the selection of this. I know you all were involved in this. This was before I came on, but right now your plan includes dam failure, drought, extreme temperatures, hot and cold, flood, which is inclusive of coastal, sea level rise, flash, stormwater, drainage, urban, and riverine, geologic, which is earthquake and landslide, severe storm, which includes hail, high winds, lightning, tornadoes, tropical storms, and hurricanes, severe winter storms, heavy snow, sleet, blizzards, ice storms, and wildfire. All right, progress to date. So as you can see there on that first one, hazards of concern were selected. The data collection piece is essentially complete. That's all your GIS data, population and demographic data, National Flood Insurance Program data that we had to acquire from FEMA, HHPD data, which we get from DEC. All of that, it has been collected through our various local, state and federal partners. The risk assessment has been completed. So that is sort of the heavy technical lift that was reliant on that massive sort of data collection piece. And so what that's inclusive of is a base map of the county that, went through a lot of vetting to make sure that it was accurate, right? So that's the general building stock, critical facilities, and then there have been analyses done, right? So HAZIS is a FEMA risk assessment modeling tool. That's been completed. Exposure analyses were completed for any non-HAZIS hazard of concern. So that's like exposure to people, to property. It's typically you see it as damage in dollars, potential damage in dollars, potential to assets or to populations. So all of those assessments are done, right? And we're incorporating them throughout the plan. Some of them are tables, some of them are visualizations, some of them are, kind of data sets. So that's something that we can share. We have our planning partnership engagement. So that was kicked off before I came on. I know that there was really quite an effort to get in touch with every single jurisdiction and to, get the data collection process started. Some communities were responsive and did, everything that was asked of them. Some we have not heard back from, and some are kind of a mix, and I can share more about that later, what that looks like across the county. But these jurisdictional reps have been engaged with. The outreach and engagement, what we mean by that is that's more the external outreach and engagement. So there have been emails that have gone out to listservs that are inclusive of, I feel like, over 1,000 email addresses, Neil, based on the listservs numbers that you gave me. There have been push notifications that have gone out on the Prepare Jefferson app. There have been posts across different social media accounts. The county website has posted, and the surveys that were shared in the app, on the social media accounts, and the county websites, I think have done very well. I think the last time we checked, we were around 325 for public survey responses, which is great. All of your neighboring counties have completed their surveys that were asked of them. And then we've had some stakeholders do some surveys, like some state agencies, some local organizations. So, there was a lot of activity there, and Neil really led the charge on that, but I think it was really worthwhile. And, we'll be able to incorporate those responses across the plan, and we'll share those responses with you, right? So you can see, what people have to say, what they're concerned about, Some are very specific about a particular location that floods or so, a lot of good information there. Then the draft sections, like I said earlier, we're always drafting as we get input, as we get data, as the planning process progresses. So we've drafted the community profile, we've drafted hazard profiles, and the GIS methodology since that was complete. And then a big one here is the jurisdictional annexes. So this is where we're going to need you all to sort of help champion getting us across the finish line. Jurisdictional annexes are essentially an individual chapter for each community. That's basically like a mini HMP for each community. So what we've done is we've kind of pivoted away from this piecemeal data collection. And what we've done is we've just pre-populated that chapter for each community with all of the data that either they've given us already or that we could, source publicly from public data sets. But when we have not received engagement, there are a lot of sections where we're asking very specifically, what is at risk in your county, right? What can the data not tell us? And, that's such an important part of this planning process. And it's such an important part of, developing actions that could be very meaningful if implemented. So we can share those jurisdictional annexes with you all. So, and maybe just one, so you can see the scope of what's being asked of each community and understand, how we can message and hopefully get people to respond. We are planning on doing an in-person little trip here end of January, early February for a few days. And, I can actually just skip over here for what's coming next. But that trip we're hoping will be a presentation of the risk assessment, the mitigation strategy workshops to get these actions developed, but also an opportunity for local jurisdictional representatives to meet with us in person if they'd like to do that. We are 100% available for phone calls or Teams meetings or Zoom meetings in the meantime. And we really want to beat that drum because that's what's going to kind of hold this plan back or propel it forward. Basically, everything else that we have needed to do is done at this point. So that piece is really important. And it's the first line here, next steps to complete the plan. So re-engaging these folks and really messaging how important it is that they're responsive and messaging how available we are to help with that. Myself, Emily, Neil, Ryan, if we needed help from our state partners, I'm sure they'd hop on a call with us. So that's really item number one. The next thing is engagement with stakeholders. We had a stakeholder survey out. We've done some good work, profiling social vulnerability based on, data, best available resources, but we want to do some engagement with you all in that space. Who are these populations? What do they need? What can you tell us that's relevant to this plan? So we want to set up some of those meetings, and have those conversations and make sure that we're really thorough with that so that we're meeting into that need. And developing strategies that help those folks. And, it is a benefit in terms of grant application, right? Now these grants want to see that the implementation of these projects or strategies, have an impact on these communities. And it's part of how things are prioritized and ranked. It's part of how these funds are allocated. So it's an important piece. As I mentioned, we will be in person. You all will get an invitation to that when we figure out exactly the dates, but we're working with Neil on that to figure out dates and locations. We're planning on having sort of 3 hubs across the county and spending a day at each so that we're meeting people where they are. And, hopefully that means that folks will show up for us and we're not just going to kind of sit in the center and wait for people to come to us. We're going to go to them. So that should be hopefully very productive. And, Neil can probably talk more about what that looks like. Then we've got to complete the draft, right? And a lot of what that means is having these conversations and concretizing them, making them material in this HMP. So, you know, it's just a matter of getting those meetings on the books and getting that information collected. And then we do have to share the draft with all of you, the jurisdictional representatives, stakeholders, and the public, and give everybody, you know, we'll give an overview, but give everybody an opportunity to have revisions, verify that things are accurate, provide comment, that kind of a thing. And then last but not least, draft to dishes and FEMA. So milestones. Let me see here. Yeah, this is our last slide, so we'll have some time, which is great. You know, I've just kind of outlined all these things, right? Where we're headed with the next steps. So I'll just do a very high level when we expect these things to be complete. We are directly engaging with you all right now, right? We would very quickly like to engage with the jurisdictional representatives, you know, even as soon as tomorrow. What that means is the email will come from us, but it will include Neil and Ryan, and it's basically sort of, here is your tangible chapter, your jurisdictional annex, as complete as we could possibly get it without talking with you, right? And really having it feel like this is, you're looking at the finished product, you just need to help us fill in the blanks. So we're going to try to kick that off as soon as this week, and be pests, essentially, to try to get that done. We will be in person, as I said, late January, early February. We will do the draft and comment period February and March. We will have the draft submitted to dishes no later than March. It's not impossible, it could be sooner, but that's what we're aiming for. Dishes has their review, you know, May, I'm saying here because I'm hopeful that it'll go well. But you know, we can't submit to FEMA unless we get the green light from dishes, but this is what we're aiming for. And then your plan expires in August. No, your plan doesn't expire in August. That's another county. That's your neighbors to them. Lewis, theirs expires in August. Our drop dead date for this is August. So we will have this updated by middle August, you know, and approved and adopted. So that's our sort of timeline looking forward. I think we're in really good shape. Like I said, a lot has occurred over the last couple of months. This plan is very primed to be getting itself across the finish line. We just need that engagement. I can't stress it enough. And I think here, this is just who we are. Here's our contact info. Yes, Neil.
So I think it's an important point as we talk about leaning into going out into the jurisdictions and getting people where they live. One key thing to note is in the 2011 plan, there was only 7 or 8 or perhaps 9 jurisdictions that participated. When we did the initial push for data collection in this planning cycle, I think we were upwards of 24, 25 or more. And then there's been some trickle in that data collection. There's been some trickle in with some incomplete checkboxes, which is why Tetra Tech and we have pivoted to a more direct approach. All of that lends itself to our goal at Jefferson County Fire and Emergency Management, Jefferson County as a whole, is to have 100% jurisdictional participation. I like to say that I have confidence in that, but if we're more than double what we did in the previous iteration, you know, that's a market improvement, and it's only up from there. So I just think it's important for you guys as stakeholders to understand that our first hurdle to get over was getting support and buy-in from more than 8 jurisdictions, and we got that early on. And again, to reiterate the message of, as you know, community services and health department and DSS and other county agencies here and codes and everybody reaches downrange in your interactions in your daily job, please sing the message of participation in this. And as we lean into this, Ryan McIntosh mentioned it when he introduced himself to you guys. He's coming on full time here at Jefferson County, and he will be a poster to push out and reach out to clerks and municipal supervisors and mayors to try to get participation and get us over the finish line. We've asked Tetra Tech to not come just once, but to come for 3 days and to lean into giving an opportunity for those people to get to us in a room and help them get through the process. Along with that, the virtual environment that Tetra Tech will support. So I am ecstatically happy of the participation we've seen, but we're not quite at 100% yet. So, you know, there's still work to be done. And as you guys, as stakeholders, interacting in your daily jobs with DOT, reaching out to communities and highway superintendents and different people with different bubbles of impact or circles of influence, please push that message forward. Participation is important. It's not only important for Jefferson County or the mitigation planning process, but it's important to build a resiliency and to improve our capabilities to withstand what the future might bring us. So I'll get off my soapbox with that and leave it back to Shannon.
Thanks, Neil. No, I think you're right on. I wonder if anybody has questions, concerns, thoughts. I wonder if anyone has any opportunities of integration to bring up, places where what we're doing, what you've heard us talk about sounds like it could, be leveraged elsewhere, or be helpful to another process. If it doesn't come to mind straight away, that's fine, but just keep it in the back of your heads as you're, kind of thinking about this, because I think, as far as we can extend the reach and, and even if you just want the data from the risk assessment, which is inclusive of populations, buildings, things like that, that might be helpful. So that's just a general ask.
If this is Jay Madison, one thing, without having seen what this plan will look like or all the data that it will contain, one thing I'd suggest that where it could possibly be integrated into is the county economic development strategy. It would be a valuable piece of information to use as an addendum or whatever to the county economic development strategy. And I know Katie and Mike Borsey, who are on the call, I wonder what their thoughts are on that.
I agree, Jay. I mean, obviously these hazards and mitigating them has a lot of interplay with the economic development going on in the county. I was going to also offer that the commission has staff members at every month's municipal board meeting in several Jefferson County communities. We could deliver the message directly there. They are used to seeing us. They'll listen to us, I think, a little bit, because it's hard to get the attention of the local municipalities. And when I'm hearing you talk about, each municipality has to have an action for each hazard of concern, that's a lot.
Yeah, totally.
So I'm wondering how that really works in reality, like how that gets done.
Yeah, that is a lot. And just because the county has that list of hazards of concern that you saw, doesn't mean that each community has to say all of those are our hazards of concern too, right? There's an opportunity to say, these are the ones that we're really concerned about, we're focused on, present the greatest risk. These are ones that we're aware of, but maybe not the highest priority. As long as they can couch that in why the selection for some and not others, if they have a small community, it may be that there's only a few that really present risk and that they would want to address. So it doesn't have to be for, all hazards for each community. Then there are some communities, right, that there may be many risks, but hopefully, we can help walk them through that. And we can, like I said, I think lean on our friends at the state because, I mean, Kevin, I'm sure you've seen it since 2023, this come into effect, some cases where this kind of action development has gone really well and some cases where it hasn't. And so I'm sure you could probably help us with some best practices about getting there.
Yeah, I think that's been one of the biggest hurdles with the update is, a lot of the communities that don't have as many resources of, yes, this is a hazard of concern, but it's not as high of a hazard concern. So the opportunities are to either have like one action that actually addresses it and just clearly calls it out, or to either say that might not actually be that high of a hazard of concern and we're gonna say maybe it's a medium or a low, or it's not really a hazard of concern at all, and then it's not really like in the risk assessment for our municipality. So those are a couple of different options. Obviously, when we get to the actual workshop, our staff can come out and support the actual development of the actual actions during that process as well.
Sounds great. I love that. Yeah, as a kind of a funny aside, I've only ever worked, I'm from New York my whole life. I live in New York. I've only ever done mitigation planning in New York. I am now the project manager of the Maui hazard mitigation plan. And I'm like, what is an action for volcanoes? Like, I don't even know yet.
Let me know if you need notes from, I looked at their plan when I deployed there.
Yes.
Anyway. And Shannon, I would volunteer my agricultural experience and expertise to assist with developing whatever Maui plan is necessary, especially if Tetra Tech is paying the expenses for it.
Yeah. Right. But at least this group, I feel like the hazards that we may be creating actions for, we understand these things. We, us at Tetra Tech, you all in your day-to-day experiences, and the state in, administering this HMP sort of guidance and the grants. There's a lot of support, so we can help communities get there. Yes, Neil.
A couple things. Miss Katie, absolutely. I'll take you up on your offer to spread the word for us. I think that, somebody that's in front of them that they know that they're comfortable with beating the drum with us or for us, or even taking us with you at certain times would certainly be a huge benefit. So thank you for that offer. We talked a little bit about, Shannon, the downrange look for getting the underserved and vulnerable populations discussion to perhaps occur in a different bubble. Ms. Markham and Tim from Community Services, Social Services, are you guys down with that? Is that something that you're even just a little bit excited about to make sure that we're not missing those socioeconomical and vulnerable populations? I just want to hear a little bit about what Tim and Ms. Karen think about that.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I mean, I just had a lot of catching up to do. I hadn't been even aware of this until, I guess, yesterday.
Yeah, well, we can always have like another very brief one-on-one or with a small group just to catch us up to speed on the specific parts of the plan that are geared towards that social vulnerability piece. So we can do that. We can set something up, or I can provide you materials, whatever, but we can get you smart on what that could look like.
Yeah, no, and I think the timing is right. We're actually sort of in the middle of a build of a mobile crisis response team for Jefferson County. And so I think there's some intersection here.
Great.
Yep. And I agree as well. And I think it's a good time for this, and it'll just kind of go along with some other conversations we've already started regarding some other programming that we have here in the department. So, yeah.
Excellent.
One more thing, Shannon, is Kevin pointed out in the chat that Watertown Jefferson County Transportation has been running a parallel path with us and he made a comment about them working with us and pulling from data, and it goes to what Jay brought up in regards with Michael and planning and what have you. That parallel tract has been mutually beneficial for what that planning process at Watertown Jefferson Community or Jefferson County Transportation has done, has kind of run a parallel track, and Shannon and her team have been very helpful to them, and I think it's been a mutually beneficial relationship. So thanks for pointing that out, Kevin.
Yes, thank you. And Emily made a good point in the chat too. She said some actions can cover multiple hazards of concern. Example, flooding along a road with intense rainfall or snow can be applicable to severe storm, severe winter storm, and flood. That's a great point. So it doesn't necessarily need to be a one-to-one. Okay, great.
Just want to respond to Kevin's a comment Kevin made in the chat. Libraries are a good resource for reaching out to the socially vulnerable populations. After our last call, Kevin, I did reach out to towns and villages, ask them to provided them with a flyer to get into the libraries, and several of them have responded that the clerk specifically took it down to the library and posted it. So we have, I took that suggestion from you and Michael last month, and that has to some degree been accomplished. I can't say with 100% certainty, but thank you for that.
No, that's great, Neil. I would also suggest, if they can, to take a picture so that we can give Shannon some documentation for the plan too.
Yep. Okay.
Understood. We'll add that to Ryan's list of things to do on January 6th.
Anything else for the good of the group?
So as always, I have a couple more things here. We just want to circle back. Matt Timmerman, City Fire Chief, City of Watertown, he joined us on the call. I think that he was just trying to get righted around. So he was here for a bit. Rich Hughes, also, I think we missed him originally. Rich, if you want to tell us about you. All right, well, in the absence of Rich saying it for himself, he is the emergency manager out at Fort Drum. So Fort Drum is a great partner to the county and certainly has a vested interest in this mitigation process. Sam Wilson jumped on a few minutes late. Sam is part of the planning department. And the last name that I had, other than the meeting guest externals, is George Berth. I'm not sure who George is.
George is with Soil and Water Conservation District.
I did know that. My bad. Thank you. So George also joins us. And then there's a couple of meeting guest externals that I'm not sure if we've covered them with everybody else or not.
Let me look quick. If they were, yes, we did. Mm-hmm.
Again, the representation in the steering group, notwithstanding Tim, who is just getting up to speed with it, and Karen, who was blindsided just like Tim was, that was a gap in our initial, and again, understand that this is only the second steering committee meeting. We've had a lot of correspondence, but it's only the second hazard mitigation steering committee meeting. So Tim, you're not as far behind as you think you are. But I recognized after that first one and through conversations and discussions along the way with Shannon, especially since we shifted from one project manager to another, that we had a gap in that social and vulnerability population. And the best way I could come up with for closing that gap was getting you and Ms. Karen into the mix. So thank you for being tolerant with our missing you the first meeting, but we're glad you're here for this one. Beyond that, again, thank you to everybody for participating, for Joe for staying out of the way and letting me run with this, for Shannon and Tetra Tech for being good partners, and to state, I can't say enough about, I think Kevin had to jump off the call because he had another meeting, but Kevin and Michael have been huge advocates for supporting this process, and I think we have a good outcome coming in March, April, May, June, July, to eventual adoption in August. And I appreciate you all making time for this call, and I'll shut up with that.
Thanks, Neil. If anybody has anything, please speak now or forever hold your peace on this call. Just kidding. All right, great. Well, I really appreciate all of you being here. As Neil said, I came on as project manager in September, so Tim, I'm right there with you. First steering committee meeting. But we're going to follow up, and we will give you lots of good information. We will be very clear with what our asks are. And let's get active with getting this finished. Neil, did you raise your hand again, or was it still up?
No, I raised it and flashed it a couple of times because I do have one more ask. And I hope Jason hasn't got off the call. Jason Crump and Jay Madison, can you stay on the call with me and Shannon for a minute after? Jason,
Yep,
are you still here?
can do.
Thank you.
I'm here.
Okay, great. So I think with that, we'll let everybody else hop, yeah?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, Jason and Jay, my ask is not private or secret or anything like that. So everybody else who's still lingering around is okay. We had worksheets that we sent out early on, as we talked about. We've transitioned the process. Two gaps that I still have are permitting that has taken place from 2000, Shannon, help me out here, 2019 to current. So Jason, I think that's a lift for you, right? And then the economic crystal ball, Jay, which I think your agency has the best insight on for economic or industrial development.
Okay.
So I'll resend. Jay, you didn't get them. They would have gone to Mr. Weir. So the two gaps I have from being able to have all little green boxes on Shannon's worksheet of getting stuff submitted. Jefferson County is still gapped because we have a codes piece and an economic and industrial development piece, kind of the what's happened in the last few years and what do we kind of anticipate in the crystal ball. So I think economic development and codes are that tag team. So since you both were on the call, I'm making an ask. I'll send the email out again today with that worksheet, even though we've evolved past the worksheet. Getting that data that's on the worksheet to Shannon and her folks will help us close that gap on the Jefferson County annex or supplement to the plan. And again, Jay, this is it was not sent to you because at the time, Mr. What's his name was retiring and Mr. Weir jumped in, and then you came in, and then you and I talked a little bit about being a highly agricultural community, and we met with Cornell, and it popped into my head that we hadn't included ag. And then when I found out that you were the number 2 at economic development, it just kind of falls into place. But I do want to close that gap.
Sure.
Jay, JC, you got anything about that? Do you think that's something we can do?
Yeah. So, well, which Jay? Jay or Jason, I guess.
Jason, sorry.
Okay. Where are we at with that? I thought that we had responded. I know a lot of municipalities were responding individually. They'd reach out to me directly, and I've supplied them with some numbers. So I guess where nothing was turned in from codes, is that where we're at as far as the numbers go?
So Shannon, help me out here. In those worksheets for Jefferson County, you were looking for places that didn't have code enforcement, right? That didn't have numbers.
I'm pulling
leaning
up
on my friends.
Yep. I'm pulling up our tracker here.
It was worksheet E.
Here we go.
I almost think that I talked to Borsi at one point too about this.
Yep. So we have. I'm sorry.
I was going to say it's a little complicated because we don't enforce all the municipalities, and then I think some of the questions were geared more towards zoning and floodplain administrator stuff. So I could really, I could answer a portion of the questions from my department, I believe.
Okay. What I can do is I can send this to you so you can see the status of, where we have data, where we don't, and, then you can let us know where you might be able to help. There are building code questions. There are permitting questions. Like you said, there are floodplain administrator questions, but that's fine if you're not able to help with that. That's usually at the local level anyway. But yes, I think let's just be in touch about this. We can hop on a call exclusively about this once you've like wrapped your head around this list and know who you can help us with.
So let's see, I'm unmuted, right? So the recent major developments from 2019 to present, Jason, where I thought you fit into that was you guys would have permitted some of that for, as the communities that the county, and if you've given that information to the towns to report up, that's great. I'm okay with that. But the two that I'm looking at on worksheet E were property development, recent major developments, 2019 to present, the type, number of units, structures, address or parcel IDs, known hazards, description, and then known or anticipated major development in the next 5 years. And that's where I thought maybe Jay fit in or economic development fit in because they're kind of looking at the crystal ball every day, right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't necessarily code numbers or permit numbers. I was looking more at the worksheet E that specifically asks about what's been done from 19 to today. And Jay might have a horse in that race as well because they looked at their crystal ball in 18 and some of it's come to fruition. So I'll reshare that, and if we can just close that gap between the couple of people, that'd be a good thing for me. I'm obsessive compulsive in the sense that I didn't get my freaking homework done, and I got to get that worksheet E done, or I'm gonna like panic. So
I think this is the right way to lean though, Neil. Codes and economic development. I think for sure that's a good way to go.
So one more quick thing, since we've discussed floodplain administrators, that when you're sending out your jurisdictional contact lists, I would press hard to get them to the table, because we don't see a lot of information from the floodplain administrators, and we can't enforce flood-resistant construction if they haven't notified us that they are in fact in a floodplain. So what happens a lot of times is, the project will be complete. We do have DEC kind of doing a few municipalities a year right now, reviewing them, something through FEMA also, and now they're complete and they're not flood-resistant construction. They don't satisfy the requirements, and we're trying to mitigate these by raising them or other issues. As I'm sure you could tell, or you would know how well that would go over as being a homeowner in the water, that you didn't realize that you'd built in the floodplain and then didn't realize that it wasn't built to flood resistant construction standards and such. So if this is a way to bring them on board, that'd be great to try to get them to the table to make sure that they are in fact reviewing some of our projects and notifying us that they're in floodplains.
I think when we lean into that, Shannon, when we lean into the in-person meetings, I think that we need to specifically target floodplain people to be a part of that conversation with their village clerk, town supervisor, or whatever. But to kind of lean into solving that or helping, again, downrange, this is something Jason's going to deal with beyond this mitigation plan. And if it's something he's already dealing with, so that might be a strategy we can employ before we ever get a strategy employed,
Definitely.
Jason.
A lot of municipalities that I've been part of a lot of the community action visits through DEC in the last 4 years when they started doing this, and a lot of times when they ask who their floodplain administrator is, they say, "What?"
The what?
So some of them they don't even know that they have a floodplain administrator or maps or any rules that they're supposed to be imposing. So
Yep. It's very common, unfortunately.
So I guess the frame of reference I can give you on that one, Jason, is it's not unlike that in emergency management, right? When you deal with an incident command structure, the incident commander is all of the other subtitles of an incident command structure. And the key is to find people to give those cards to. And it's like playing Uno, right? So the town supervisor that has to have a floodplain administrator that's relying on the county and county codes and county planning to kind of play that role. They're looking to not have to give that card up, but they have to have somebody in that local community. So yeah, we were kind of, there's some same names, if you will. There's like a floodplain administrator and a code enforcement officer for 5 or 6 different villages or towns is the same guy. So yeah, that's town supervisors are playing Uno too, right? They've got the responsibility to have a floodplain administrator, but don't necessarily know that they have one or don't have one. And they lean on their codes office to be that guy, and their codes guy's going, "What floodplain? What? I'm a codes guy." So yeah, it's I feel you.
It's often labeled as the zoning officer, because every town, even though if we do enforce a building code, they're required to have a zoning officer, and in their floodplain administrator by their local law is normally default the zoning officer too. And then, like you were talking about, the other villages and towns that have building code, they have 3 hats that they wear. But at minimum, zoning and floodplain administrator is almost one and the same in each municipality.
So Jason, I'll tell you that our planning partner group included zoning and planning and codes for all the municipalities. And in the absence of those identified people, again, following the incident command structure, I hit it hard with the town and village supervisor and village mayor, because what they have or don't have is their problem, not mine, right up until it becomes ours, right? Which we've experienced together in different places that had code enforcement, and then all of a sudden they didn't. And here we are with a small disaster that affects a large population, right? We've been there together and done that. Well, thank you, Jason and Jay, for staying with that. And Jay, I hope you can rub the crystal ball and tell me what's on the horizon, because Shannon needs to know. It needs to be integrated into the plan. And, like I said, some combination of the two of you, between the 2018 crystal ball and today actual, between what's been built with permitting and what's been seen in the crystal ball to come to fruition, we can get those data points to Shannon. That would be great.
Sure, more than happy to help out, and I'll go get the crystal ball out of the special vault we keep it in. So
we keep ours in the middle of the dispatch office, and we rub it every day to see what's going to come today.
Well, I hope it works.
All right, thank you all very much. And again, Shannon, I have another guy at my door, so if we're done, I'm going to bail.
Yeah, we're done.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Emily, and everybody else. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye.
Be in touch. Bye.
Bye-bye.